amazing. Life's a book, don't get stuck on sad pages. Rainy days with no money. Hard work leads to days that are sunny. Looking back, it was all needed. The problems, the pain, the trauma, the grieving. You are now tuned in to the prisoner to painter. Prisoner to painter. Hard work, dedication. Rainy days, inspiration. Prisoner to painter. And now, a word from your local Pope dealer.
Okay, there we go.
Welcome to the Prisoner to Painter podcast. I'm Nathan McDermott.
And I'm Katie McDermott.
And today we have Army veteran, handyman, home inspector, and now owner of an MMA academy and wrestling academy, Ward Long. Thank you for coming on, Ward.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an awesome opportunity. I love what you're doing.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Katie, when we first started, she's like, man, you should really get a hold of my cousin. And yeah, I tried, and it's not that you're hard man to get a hold of. You're busy, I'm busy. So yeah, I'm glad we could figure it out.
Sure.
Sweet. Thank you. It was on the end.
Yep. Well, here we just dive right in. So I just normally start with what was your first memory of childhood?
So it's kind of sad when I read your questions the other day and thought about this. So my earliest memory of childhood is standing at the door waiting for my mom to come home while my dad's on the couch reading a newspaper. So when I was like, I don't know, 3 or 4, my mom went back to work. And so I just hated being with my dad. So I just wait for my mom to come home.
I get I loved my mom and my dad, but I was a mama's boy, so I get that. I get. What did your mom and dad do for work?
So my mom did a lot of different things. She really wanted to be an accountant, but never finished her school.
Mm-hmm.
So she would waitress here and there. My dad always worked in a shop, stamping shops or like Dawn Food Products, stuff like that. And he worked a lot, and oftentimes like third shift. So wasn't really around a lot when I was a kid.
Gotcha. Geez, I'm sorry I keep looking down. I need to kind of get this figured out. Eventually put it up on a board or something. What was your favorite toy/TV show?
I was a Ninja Turtles kid.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I never really watched like the action cartoons, like the fighting, G.I. Joe, stuff like that. I was never really into that, but Ninja Turtles was my jam.
That's cool. Sorry, I just stuttered there. So I wasn't going to go too much into your childhood because I feel like a lot of your story is like in the future, but I just got a little
lay the foundation.
But I just got a little more knowledge than what I need. Do you want to share a little bit of what you told me before the show?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an open book, man.
Awesome. So I don't believe your story has a lot of addiction in the terms of like your successes, in my opinion, anyways. Obviously, but it's your story. Army, starting a business. I mean, that's fucking awesome. But how was childhood in terms of like, did your mom and dad drink?
Yeah, so mom and dad were both heavy drinkers. And I think like when I was probably 9-10 years old was when their marriage was coming to an end. They were fighting a lot. Both drank a lot, but like mom would be at the table talking on the phone drinking. Dad would be on the couch reading his newspaper drinking. And I mean, in my dad's defense, as much as he was like absent and like ignored my mom, which I'm sure drove her crazy, she was mean. Like when she got mad, she could be very mean. And she would just hang up the phone with whoever she was talking to and just start yelling at him. And he would just sit there and ignore her, which would only make her more mad. So the addiction and the alcoholism like runs deep in my family, both sides. Gotcha. My mom's dad was a career alcoholic and actually drank himself to death before I ever met him. He didn't even turn 40. He died of cirrhosis. Dang. Yeah. And I mean, my dad to this day, drinks probably from the time he gets up till he goes to bed. And it's part of his normal routine.
Yeah.
But, he never got like, my mom would get drunk and get mad. My dad never had that.
That's good.
Just drink.
Well, in pretty much what you said, it is laying the foundation, but I also ask these questions because it's like, it's crazy when you understand the amount of addiction or the amount of problems out in the world. It's like, because it's not, I personally go to AA and I'm like, okay, so only 20 people in Jackson have this problem. No, only 20 people in Jackson go to AA. You know, it's all over. It's all over. So so just going right from childhood, what's your strongest memory of like elementary school?
Man, I had a lot of friends in elementary. I went to Bennett School until second grade, and then I went to Hunt. And then in fifth grade, I moved to Napoleon. So, but fights, man, I was always fighting. And I kind of now it goes back to my dad. My dad was always a tough guy. Like I always heard stories of him fighting. So to me, I had this skewed sense of what a man is, what makes you a man. And I think that was probably at the top of my list of what makes you a man is how well you can beat people up. But at the same time, I was never a bully, right? There's always plenty of kids to stick up for because there's a lot of kids that won't stand up for themselves. So that's what I was doing. But I used it as an excuse to get in fights, I think, because they're like, oh, well, that kid's picking on that kid. And I had to stand up for him. So, and I would go on my way to find that. But oddly enough, I always the anxiety of fighting was scary to me. In the moment I didn't want to do it, it was almost like I was fighting for principle. But yeah, I'd say fighting was my biggest elementary school memory. I was probably in 50 fights before fifth grade.
Jeez, man. Well, they say there's a wolf, a sheep, and a sheepdog, and it seems like you fall under the sheepdog. I'm just as mean as the wolf, but you're fighting for a good reason, regardless of if it was a skewed sense of.
Well, there were probably better ways to handle those situations, but my dad was, you'd meet violence with violence. Yeah. More violence. That's probably why I went on to MMA and just how it just that one little influence of what I thought a man was molded the rest of my life. And here we are running an MMA again.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. So thanks, Dad, I guess.
Man. So were you born and raised in Jackson?
Yeah, born and raised in Jackson. And like I said, in fifth grade, I moved to Napoleon. I still lived in Jackson for a year. But I was going to school in Napoleon, which was a crazy culture shock, man. It was, you could get in a fight in Jackson Public Schools and nobody knew about it. There's a lot of kids and not a lot of teachers. Somebody gets beat up, somebody doesn't, and you go on about your day. Maybe you get jumped Monday. I don't know. It wasn't like that in Napoleon. So a lot of kids like to pick on you and bully you, you know what I mean? But they were not they weren't savvy to the retaliation. They were surprised when I punched them in the mouth. So I got in a lot of trouble at first, and I was labeled a bad kid, right? Because they don't hear, teachers and staff don't hear what they're saying to me on the playground. No. So that was quite a culture shock. But after a few years, just like any kid at any school, you find friends. You mold in. People eventually stopped running their mouth to me because they realized what the result was always. So then by the time I got through high school, man, I had a bunch of friends, and some of those people are still friends today, or people that I run into today, and I've actually made friends that I was never friends with in high school that we're cool now.
Awesome.
So I think the moral of that story is everybody comes around. I try to tell kids that struggle in high school, hey, this is such a small part of your life. There's these people that are making you so upset, you won't even remember them in a few years. And then sometimes you do remember them, and then it's a little fun to see what they're doing 10 years later compared to what you're doing.
This is just going to be a thrown out question because it's thought of it, but did you and Mr. Ash get along?
Yeah, and still get along.
Good.
Actually, so Mr. Ash came when my sister was in high school. I was still in middle school, and my sister was kind of the same thing, fighting all the time. You can't say something sideways to her without getting punched in the mouth. So
keep people in check at least.
So she had a lot of interactions with Mr. Ash, and my mom did as well. Not necessarily bad. Ash was always the kind of guy that would find the common ground with the kid. And instead of being you can't be fighting all the time, he'd be like, bro, why are you fighting? Well, this, and he's like, yeah, that's messed up. Kids can't do that, but you got to control your reactions. So we had a great relationship. I could go sit in his office if I was fuming about something, and it kept me out of some trouble. So funny you asked that. So then I went to Ackerson Lake.
Yes, so did I.
Alternative.
So did I, yes.
So they sent me there because I wasn't doing my homework and stuff. I wasn't really applying myself at all in
Gotcha.
school. I was just hanging out with friends. So they moved me there. And that's a story in and of itself. So let's see how to start it. All right. Well, we used to play basketball at the end of school,
Mhm.
right? For like the last 15 minutes and then wait for pickup.
Okay.
So there was a fight during a basketball game. Okay. So they took our basketball away. And then we asked, like, when can we get the ball back?
Mhm.
Well, when we get this issue resolved. So me being the person I was, like, after I knew that they thought they had the issue resolved, I said, do you have the issue resolved? Of course they have to say yes. And I'm like, so we can have our ball back. No. So I organized a sit-in protest with my friends. So we show up to school, block the office door, sit on the table that's blocking it, get petition signatures, some of the teachers signed.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So, and then the kid that got kicked out for fighting brought his family up to the school one day. Came into the school and just started fighting everybody that was involved in that,
Hey.
like smacking people around like crazy.
Yeah.
So they call the cops come up, Mr. Ash comes up, Officer Vital Cheese at the time was a county sheriff liaison with the school.
Okay.
So he was up there and I would like lift sometimes with Ash and Vital Cheese. So I'm like on the cell phone, my friend's cell phone, trying to get parents, right? Because they wouldn't let us use the phone. So I'm calling people's parents and I'm like, hey, you got to come up to the school, pick up your kid. And the cops, the principal says, officer, that kid's using a cell phone on school property and it's prohibited. It's posted. So that's a state law violation, right?
Okay.
So the cop's like, hey, come here. I'm like, just 1 second, sir. I got to give the phone to my mom. So my mom was there. And you don't tell a cop just 1 second, right? So he grabs me, puts me against the wall. He's like, do you have anything on you I should know about? I said, I got some juicy fruit in my pocket if you want that. So this kind of gives you an indication of the kind of kid I was. Like, I was a smart ass.
Yeah.
Don't make no mistake. I was not always right.
Yeah, okay.
But much like I am today, like I'm very outspoken when I think I am right. And I don't always use the right words. So, but he pats me down, cuffs me, puts me in the car. I'm like, great, I'm going to jail, right, for using a cell phone.
Yeah.
But Mr. Ash and Officer Vital Cheese talked to him and basically like had the conversation like, hey, I get what you did, right? But this kid like isn't really a bad kid. Like he's thinks he's fighting for the right thing. Like probably not take him to jail. And of course, my mom's there talking to Ash, like, don't let him take my baby. So yeah, and he's like, takes me out of the car. He's like, well, at the request of this gentleman and this gentleman, they say you're a good kid and you're not a problem child, so we're gonna let you go today. And I was like, oh, awesome. And this is how well Ash knows me. I walk back in the school to get my coat, right? And he goes, hey, when you go in there, don't say anything smart ass. I was like, I won't. So I grabbed my stuff and left. So yeah, sorry, that was a little tangent. I didn't think we wanted to go down. But yeah, that's my relationship with Mr. Ash. Now I like rent the he lets me rent the Spotted Aggies. Like they have the back room that for birthday parties for my kids and stuff.
That makes my gift card.
You're giving it away. So yeah, great guy. Great for the kids, man. Just a good dude.
Yeah, he is all the way around. I didn't know you would. I seen you moved to Napoleon. I didn't register that you might have did that younger. So so that's why I didn't even have any questions about that. But that's awesome. Yeah, me and I went to Ackerson. Me and Mr. Ash knew each other for a little bit of time. So that's cool. Was there any favorite teachers?
Oh yeah. So man, I had favorite teachers in like every grade. So like Carl Bunker, Chip Bunker. Was my math teacher in middle school, and then later was my varsity wrestling coach. So I really liked him. I always liked Mrs. Yolaki. She was my drama teacher in middle school. So these people are retired, like now. But and then moving up to high school, Keith Schultz. Another really good guy. Like this guy's done a ton of jobs. He was like a boat cop for the county. He's like an EMT, a teacher, a cross country coach or track coach. But so when I was in high school, I mentioned that I never did my homework right and I always got failing grades. And my teachers hated it because like I would take a test and A or B on the test. And they're like, what? 80% of your grade was homework.
Yeah.
So I wasn't passing anything. But Mr. Schultz, I always passed his classes.
Right.
And I hated writing, right? Like I have a gift for writing, but I hated it. And his classes were always like the English classes, like where you write a report on something. And I always did the work. I don't know why. I can't really explain. I just have a ton of respect for him. And that's not to say I didn't respect my other teachers, but yeah. And then like Craig Boer owns Boer's Market in Napoleon now. He was a history teacher. I liked him, but probably not because of the teacher he was, probably because he was my middle school wrestling coach. So we had that relationship. And then for a short time, when I was in 8th grade, there was a principal at the middle school. I don't know his first name, but Mr. Rankin. And he was a wrestler. I think he wrestled at Michigan State.
Cool.
And during summer school one year, he was in the school and we were on break. And so we're on break in the hallway and he's like, hey, you want to go? And we start wrestling. And just bouncing each other off lockers. I was a big kid and he was a small guy. So it was fair, when I'm in 8th grade. And we're bouncing in the lockers and stuff. The teacher's like, let's go, guys. We got to go back to class and we finish up our match.
That's cool.
We get back to class. They're like, who won?
Well, I got to have who won. Okay.
That was actually the last time him and I wrestled. Because the next time I tried to wrestle him, I was a freshman in high school, and he came up in the wrestling room. He's like, "Dude, you are too big for me now." And he was a small guy, and he was probably 140 pounds. And I mean, in 8th grade, I was pushing 200. So.
Wow. Well, hey, you lined this up perfect for me, man. How was your high school experience? I'm going to assume you were popular just by the sport.
I would say there's two different kinds of popularity, right? There's the popularity where like you're the preppy kid or the jock and everybody loves you, you got all these friends. And then there's the popular where like everybody knows you and everybody says hi to you, but you don't hang out with them. I always made it a point in high school, like I always hung out with the kids that like the misfits, right? Like that nobody else hung out with, didn't have a large group of friends. Like those were the kids like I like to hang out with because they were the coolest people. They weren't being fake all the time, trying to impress people. So that's who I hung out with. And in turn, I didn't get in a lot of fights in high school because like people like wouldn't let it get that far with me by the time, I got through all the middle school fights and elementary school fights. So I just didn't get pushed to that point, but I spoke up for people a lot, and there was a lot of like grabbing this kid by the collar and putting him against the wall. Had some talks with Mr. Ash about that. Like, I'm not hitting them. But yeah, usually when I'm like, well, this is why, he's kicking this kid in the back of the knee every time he sees him. He's dropping his, stuff like that. So, high school was, having fun really. Like I said, I didn't do my work. I mean, I was started drinking like my sophomore year, going to all the parties every weekend. After I threw my 16th birthday party, which was a huge bash, I got invited to all the parties. So I was like always with upperclassmen, like just drinking like crazy in high school and smoking weed. So like my day before I went to Ackerson would consist of like showing up to school, meeting up with my best friend and talking about how stoned we got that morning. And then I think I had like first hour gym for this one whole trimester. I'd have first hour gym and then kind of lose the buzz. And then when you calm down again, it comes back. And then my friend was like kicked out of his 3rd hour class. So we would just leave instead of going to the in-school suspension room. We would just leave and walk to his house. His mom would leave for work around that time. So we'd like hide out in the woods till she'd leave for work. And then we'd go in the house and like, usually there was like a chore list, like, hey, do the dishes. I left some weed for you. So we would do the dishes and smoke the weed. And that would be our day for probably an entire trimester of my junior year. That was my school day.
Right on.
Man. So, which is why, like, a big reason why I like try to lead the kids now. Like, I did all of that stuff. I know you can't make an excuse that I don't know. Like one of my wrestlers comes to me, no, I know you're bullshitting, dude. Like, don't play that game. You're not going to do that stupid shit. You do this. You're a wrestler and a student. This is what you do. So I use that, to help mold
Sounds like that. I'm sorry to interrupt. That sounds like what you went through really benefits who you teach now.
Absolutely. Oh, 100%.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Directly ties it.
So, yeah, well, that I'll definitely get to that. 'Cause that, to me, I think it's successful what you're doing, but I really think molding the next generation is the most successful thing you can do.
That's why I do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the most important thing you learned in high school?
Most important thing I learned in high school was that I didn't need high school.
Fair enough.
I didn't need the people there. I didn't need the education there. There was nothing about it.
Understood. So my next question then, you answered. Did high school prepare you for real life?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Not even close.
I think that's like a general consensus, actually.
Yep.
If you could go back in time, though, is there anything that you would change about what you did in high school?
Yeah, I would have focused a lot harder on wrestling. So when I wrestled in high school, I could never wrestle for anything that mattered. No conference championship, no district,
God.
because I wasn't eligible. So I didn't have the grades.
Gotcha.
So my coach would kind of overlook that for like the regular season competitions, but which you'd never get away with now.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I never got to wrestle for anything that mattered. And like I remember one year, like my sophomore year, being like, man, I want to wrestle at Iowa. And the combination of like not having like a positive, and I had uncles and stuff, and my dad would like tell me the right things, but like nobody was ever like, everybody was like, he'll listen if he wants to. Nobody was like, you're gonna fucking listen, like I do with my kids. You know what I mean? And so the lack of that, and then like my teammates never really supporting me, and like people laughed at me when I said I wanted to go to Iowa. And my high school wrestling team was solid. I mean, those dudes were really good, and I was pretty good. So I thought I wasn't that good because what I was compared to, you know what I mean? And then these guys never really accepted me. So that was tough. But yeah, if there's one thing I would change, I would focus on what's important. I would have gotten the grades. I would have focused on wrestling. And I don't regret it though, because like where I'm at now, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Maybe have more money, but I wouldn't be doing anything different.
Gotcha.
I'd still be coaching these kids. I'd still be starting a wrestling league. I would still be doing handyman work.
Awesome.
Like there's nothing that would have been different other than maybe I would have went to college and wrestled.
Gotcha. One thing that I just heard the other day, and something that you said reminded me of it. So being what you were compared to, so saying that you weren't as good of a wrestler because what you were compared to. Somebody asked me, what do you call the lowest? So like a class of doctors, the doctor with the least good grade. What do you still call it? You still call him a doctor. Yeah, like, even if you were still on the team, it's like so you're still a damn good wrestler if you made that team. So that's awesome. So I learned this now. So you joined the Army at 22. I'm assuming you graduated at 17, 18.
Didn't actually graduate.
Okay.
When I got sent to Ackerson, I was there for not quite a whole school year. I sold a couple joints to a kid on lunch, and then we smoked them on the way back to school. So ultimately that led to me getting kicked out of the school. And they wanted me to go to rehab before I came back. And I was 17, so I just went and got a job.
Gotcha.
And then got my GED.
Good. Was Miss Daly the principal?
Yes.
Yes, she was. Yeah, she quit being the principal when I went there, and Mr. Adams became the principal.
Okay.
Which I think he was a better choice. Miss Daly was that place was a zoo. I mean, really.
Yeah,
That
my butting heads with her is what led to the protest and all that. And I mean, the teachers there. I remember one teacher there, I can't even remember his name, but he used to tell kids, like, you're going to end up on Cooper Street. And like, I mean, we all know from like positive and negative reinforcement, like what somebody hears all the time is going to become the reality.
Yeah.
So like when you tell your kid, like, you're going to go to prison, but if you tell them things like, if you keep that up, you're going to get good grades. If you keep that up, you're going to be very successful. Like that's the kind of things we should be telling kids, not the reverse.
Yeah,
so there was a lot of that. A friend of mine, Zach Canan, was the principal there just until he left and went to Michigan Center last year.
Yep.
But to see the difference in the kids with somebody that's there to support them and try to help them along compared to somebody that's like, it's good. And maybe she just was there too long.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it just became.
and Adams tried better than Daly, and then Canaan was a better choice. He came in, I think, 2 years after I left.
Okay.
He was definitely a better choice. Adams tried, but I don't know how to say this nicely. Is all those kids and how terrible we were, it took a toll on him.
Sure.
Like it definitely wore him out. He
Yeah.
wasn't meant for that.
And see, Zach is a person that even as a coach, he'll make a connection with each individual.
That's good.
And I told somebody that the other day about, he used to coach the Napoleon varsity team before he left and went to center. And he could tell you something personal, not wrestling related, about every single kid on the squad because he had those relationships with those kids. And you don't have that at every, with every coach. That's something I try to do. Because of him, he's like a mentor to me in coaching. So
it's crazy how Jackson to me is still kind of big. No matter if people say that it's kind of a small place,
Yeah.
like it's still kind of big. It's just crazy knowing all the people.
you start to talk to people and hear the names they mention. You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah. So then it said you joined the Army in 2007. So what happens from 17 to 22 when you enlist? Well, what job?
Oh, working construction, roofing. I worked at Pentar Stamping where my uncle was the plant manager. Got laid off from there, went back there, got laid off again, and that's when I joined the Army. So just doing a lot of drinking, partying, went to Canada, blowing all my money on whatever I could, When I was in high school, I was like kind of a shy kid. And I had a girlfriend pretty much all the way through high school. So like when I hit my 20s, probably because of like a lot of the way I was raised, my family, especially the Walling side, I like had this like womanizer type of mentality. Like that's how you're supposed to be. And then I learned like in your 20s, if you're like an asshole to girls, like they like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I became like kind of that asshole, like cocky, but it worked. So yeah, I just did a lot of partying before I joined the Army. And then like when I walked in, one of your questions was like the recruitment process. So there was not really a recruiting process for me because when I walked in the recruiter's office, I was like, I'm ready to join the Army. Where do I sign? Like there was no recruiting me. So I picked my job, went up to MEPS. There is a little story there. So I should write a book. So I had to pass a drug test, right, to join the Army. And I was smoking weed all the time. So eventually, after 28 days, I could pass, right? So we get ready, send me to the hotel. I go to MEPS. I passed my drug test, all that. I'm sitting there and I meet with a master sergeant to talk about the job I want to get or whatever. And they ask you a few questions about your recruiting process. And he's like, well, I see you were on probation here. But you were only on probation for a month? What's that about? Yeah. So we went and tailgated the 2006 game of the Century, Michigan versus Ohio State. I didn't know how far Columbus was, right? I'm like, it's in Ohio. That'll be easy. Yeah, so limited gas money, right? Yeah. So I ended up stealing gas on the way home. Right? Now, on an envelope in my car is written down the gas station's address and the name of the gas station. So when I get home, I can send them money. Right? I'm not a thief. Yeah. So, but they put out an APB, pulled me over 2 counties over. Had a joint, got caught with that. Went to jail for stealing the gas because I didn't have money to pay, right? Yeah. So anyway, that's what I was on probation for. Now I told the judge, I wrote her a letter and I'm like, hey, I want to join the Army, but I can't because I'm on probation. And she says, well, if you prove to me that you joined the Army, then you're off probation. I'll just let you off. And I was like, sweet. So I told them that. And they're like, whoa, no. You can't do that. You can't use military service in lieu of a criminal punishment, despite all the stories we've heard. Yeah, right? Yeah. So my recruiter gets reprimanded. I get deferred for 30 days. So I had to go home and wait around again for another 30 days. Yeah. And then I went and I joined and I left 6 days later. And after my second time going up there, was so happy to get away. First time I was ever on an airplane. Right on. No, I was just curious. And sometimes, and I write it down for my notes because sometimes I don't use the right words, but I've never joined the military, and it's something I've always looked up to. My grandpa joined the military. He was over in World War II. My great grandpa
My uncle is in the bombing of Lebanon, so it's something that I really look up to. So I just don't know the process. So you just walk into the recruiter's office, hey, I want to join the army, and then
Yeah, I mean, they
sign
look
papers?
into like, so there's, when we weren't in wartime, there was a long list of like, these are things that you absolutely like, physical stuff, you know, you can't be overweight, you can't have asthma, like things like that.
Yeah.
You know, high school diploma. Well, the army was waiving everything, like
Okay.
whatever. We just want everybody in. We'll fix them, or they, you know, they'll see themselves out.
Yeah.
So when I went in, they were like, "Oh, you got a GD? That's okay. We can waive that. We got, you know, I was overweight. That's all right. We can waive possession of marijuana charge. Oh, that's all right. We can get a waiver for that."
Awesome. Okay.
They were taking everybody in 07.
Gosh, it was active wartime.
Oh yeah.
Okay. See,
Yeah.
because I'm 27, so that was still
You were like
Yeah,
10.
you're
10. Yeah. So it doesn't register.
See, I was in high school when 9/11 happened.
Okay.
So
I
for
was
me, it
in
was like,
first grade. I remember it being on TV. It's like the one big event I remember. It's 9/11.
I skipped school that day.
Did you go to military university before or after enlistment?
After, so when you're in the army, if you enroll in college while you're in the army, it's 100% tuition assistance.
Nice.
They'll pay for all of it.
That's cool.
So rather than waiting till I got out to use my GI Bill,
Mhm.
I started going while I was in. And I was one of those people, man, that like I'm scrolling through the degree plans while I'm in Iraq. There's nothing I want to do. I'm not made for this world.
Mhm.
But I found security management. It's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna learn about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Started learning about that. And then it's really weird that I ended up being a carpenter because I grew up doing that type of stuff.
Mhm.
Like my uncles did that, and I hated it. And I'm like, this isn't me.
Mhm.
But now, like, I like building stuff. Like, that's what I like to do. I like cabinets and countertops, like my favorite. Like, I love doing cabinets. I love doing trim carpentry, like, stuff like that. So it's weird how you get led into to things that you love.
Do you ever think that so you build stuff with your hands and you build people up? Do you think those go hand in hand?
I do sometimes, actually. I mean, when I had B&K Handy Helpers, I would hire guys that, you know, just needed a hand up, you know, and then not only are they working with me and learning a skill and making some money, but and having some self-worth, like I'm coaching them up the whole time too about everything else in life. You know, they tell me about their problems. I'm like, well, look at it like this, you know? So yeah, it does go hand in hand for sure.
So you build a lot more than with your hands.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's cool. That is. Where did you go to boot camp and how was basic training?
So boot camp, basic training are the same thing.
Okay.
So I went to South Carolina in the Army. They call it Relaxin' Jackson. Fort Jackson is known as like the easiest basic training because that's where the women go too.
Okay.
It wasn't easy by any means. Was it easier than Fort Benning? Probably.
Okay.
I can't really speak on that, but it was okay. It was hard for some people, but when I went, it was like I was dead set. This is what I'm doing with my life. So I'm a very determined person. And I was running for a month before I went in the Army, trying to get my PT score up, you know, and I was a cigarette smoker too, so I needed to get in better shape. And then, so when I went, it was like, I knew it was a game, like the yelling at me, like, you're not making me mad. This is all part of the game. I know what this is. I kept my mouth shut. I did what I was supposed to do. And, you know, became a good soldier. Went on to AIT to learn my job, which was 92 Fox, which is petroleum supply, a fueler. Never really did my job. But AIT was like, it was like my chance to like redeem myself from high school. Right. So you're in a classroom and they had these awards for a distinguished honor graduate, which is the highest GPA in the class. And like there's president roles, things like that. So like I was crushing awards in AIT. I graduated distinguished honor graduate, graduated as a class vice president. I had like the 1 week in the field. I got the highest award for that. Like I became a squad leader. Like
awesome.
I was a fat kid, right? So like they never gave me the important jobs and stuff. And then like the kid, like this one kid was a RTO, just radio operator, and he got fired. in the field, and they promoted me to it. And then they promoted me from that to a squad leader.
Awesome.
So that was where I really got to like start to see my potential and start to see the payoff on it.
Awesome.
So yeah, it was a really good time for me.
That's cool, man. What was your most memorable moment of all that? And I'm gonna throw this in there. Did you ever think of going to like Army Rangers or anything like that? I mean, you're a pretty built dude, and I could tell that you're driven. So it seems like that would have been
I did think about that, but not until I was already set on getting out.
Okay.
I enlisted for 4 years. My unit was like special in that they were being relocated and then kind of rebuilt. So a lot of units coming from a lot of places. So when I got stationed at Fort Lewis, I was stuck there. They call the unit fenced.
Okay.
Usually you move a lot in the military, right? I spent my entire time in one unit. So then when we finally got up to power and they dropped the fence, now we had to get ready to deploy. So then we went over to Iraq in 2009. And then when I got back, I only had just over a year left. Now, in order to go do something cool like that, you have to re-enlist.
Okay.
So I wasn't going to re-enlist, but I had kicked around that EOD, explosive ordnance disposal, Rangers or SF was like, Rangers is cool, but SF is like a level beyond that.
How cool.
So, and I know guys that went to SF selection. I know guys that went on to be Rangers. Guys that I served with that, and I mean, it's another level for sure. It would have been cool, but no, I did not do that.
Understood. I think everybody in the Army is badass, but a little more badass when you're talking like
For sure,
Rangers.
absolutely.
Like, you guys are monsters.
I worked for the exchange in Fort Carson, and the Green Berets would come in, and they just like walked in, and I was like, "Dang, they look
Like
super
they
cool!" Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, and they get to just do PT for the day. Rangers do that too. You'd see we were right next to 75th Ranger Bat on Fort Lewis, so we'd be doing PT and see. I mean, you'd see those guys like it's like 11 o'clock and they're still running. Like, you guys started at 6. Like, yeah, but we're going home after this.
Just
Damn.
run all day. It's over. Fuck, shoot. Man, how you touched on it a little bit, but I do want to go right back to it because I think it's important. How did the time in the Army change you? And I say that because you already said that I hear the discipline just from schooling, so I can only imagine that it's more than that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that like high school taught me that I didn't need high school, the Army taught me that I could learn anything. In the Army, like when there's classes, like, okay, we need this guy certified in this, so we send him to a class. And then like your next level of that is like you're teaching the class. So you can learn anything. Like it's all just knowledge and a test. Like, okay, cool, I can do that. And so that's what the bigger thing I took from the Army was I'm not afraid to learn something new.
Awesome.
I'm not afraid to go try something I don't have experience in. That's how I got so good being a handyman. Like there's a lot of jobs I did that I was like, hey, I've never done this before. It's going to take me a long time, but I'm only going to try to do this much, because you're helping me. And so that's how I got good at that. But it's all because of the Army. Like I'm never intimidated by any job I have to do or any challenge that comes on. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do that. I'm sure I can.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest thing. And then I wouldn't say the Army made me an addict, but definitely contributed to it. And that you're just surrounded by a bunch of people that also want to just get fucked up. So, I remember my recruiter telling me that. He's like, do you like to drink? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, you'll fit in great. You'll find a buddy that likes to drink too, and you guys will be going out all the time.
Well, on base, booze is cheap. Like they got cheap booze on base.
They do, but you don't ever want to hang out on base. You want to go out and fuck with civilians, get in fights.
Yeah. Well, that was my next question though. Is there really a lot of stuff to do besides drink when you're like deployed or when you're stationed?
Sure, there is. So
Okay.
I was in Fort Lewis, Washington, which is some of the beautiful country the USA has to offer.
Okay.
And my dad told me when I went out there, he said, hey, that's some of the most beautiful country you'll ever see. Don't spend all your time in a bar. And I did just that. I spent all my time in a bar. I went to Mount Rainier twice. Once when my wife at the time came out, and then once when my dad came out.
Gotcha.
But I had a buddy that was always snowboarding and doing, there was guys that were always out doing stuff. I was an alcoholic.
Yeah. I understand that.
What rank did you make to?
I was a specialist, E4.
Nice.
So, yeah, there was a lot of push for me to go to the NCO board and be a sergeant. I'm getting out. Like, I'm going to spend my time doing my college classes while I'm still in. I was soldier of the month twice. So I was like called a board baby sometimes. Like guys that go to the board and do well, I call them board babies. But like always pushed me to go get that rank. There's no point.
How do rankings go? So like, how did you make your way up there? Private?
So when I went in, you can get rank when you first go in based on a few different things. Like if you do really well on PT, you can get ranked that way.
Okay.
If you have like a certain amount of college credits or a degree, you can get ranked that way. So I went in at the bottom. E1, private, no patch, just a fuzzy square of Velcro.
Okay.
And then I got E2. I graduated basic training. I think I got PFC shortly after graduating AIT. And then I got a waiver to specialist. 2 years in service, you can make specialist automatic.
Right.
2 years in service, 1 year in rank, or 18 months in service, 6 months in rank. So I got that. So I got it as quickly as I could. But by that point, I had established myself in my unit as a good soldier. I could shoot. Even as a fat kid, I was pretty good at PT. And that's how I ended up getting on the PSD platoon, which is personal security for my battalion commander and sergeant major. And there was like 20 of us in the platoon. So when we were in Iraq, our job was to protect them. And they traveled a lot to go see, our unit spread out all over the place. So that was a cool gig because I could shoot and do a little bit of PT. I was smart. They put me on that. And then the leadership there, Sergeant Delgado, like whipped me into pretty good shape. Every time I opened my mouth for the first month, it was 2-5 princess. I would just say something. It was 2-5 princess, like 25 push-ups.
Okay.
And it was every time I opened my mouth. That's how it was for the first month. I was in that platoon. And then when I got to Iraq and really started like learning about diet, because I was like a meat and potatoes kid, right? So like I never thought I was eating a ton of potatoes. Like that makes you fat. So and I didn't know that. My parents didn't know that. So when I started to learn about diet, that's when I first lost all my weight. And then I realized that I was active as a fat kid, right? So I didn't know it, but I was building all this muscle under that fat. So once I shredded it all, I'm like, wow, I have abs, like muscles. So that was pretty life-changing for me.
God, I just lost what I was gonna. No, it's not that. It was something. There's something good about. I want to be careful asking this because I know it can bring. Did you ever see any active war zones?
No. So, well, yes and no. So where I was in Iraq in Basra is like way down south, right? And I was there in 2009, 2010. So it was basically a peacekeeping mission at that point.
Okay.
So we had this long list of rules of engagement. And so comparatively, like back in 2003, like their initial push through Fallujah, it was like, if you see a military-aged male outside, you kill him. Like that's how the rules of engagement were. Like you were shooting everything.
Were you in the same place where the Battle of Ramadi, I think it was? No. Okay.
No. So again, like that, like the rules of engagement were like kill everything.
Okay.
Go home alive. So when I was there, it wasn't like that. It was like again, like a peacekeeping mission. So we took over for some British troops. So it was our allies in the area. And it was crazy because like you stay in Iraq, we stayed in Choose is what you call them. And it's like, it's basically a big walk-in freezer, okay? With an air conditioning unit.
Gotcha.
So, and there's a ton of them in like rows, right? And then with a big cover over the top, like a metal ceiling, right? To catch shrapnel, stuff like that. So when we get there to move in, there's like concrete blocks and thick sheet steel, like bunkers made in these Choose. And we're like, what the fuck is going on? Like these guys were just afraid. Well, come to find out, they like had some deal with I use this term lightly, terrorist, because in Basra, there were no real, like, it's not like Al-Qaeda's there. It's like Al-Qaeda's threatening the people there to shoot at Americans or they'll kill their families. So they're not real terrorists. They're just like caught in a hard spot.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, please go home.
Yeah, we don't want to.
so
Yeah.
that's who was like, they would shoot rockets. And apparently the Brits had some kind of deal where like the rockets would never hit anything important as long as the Brits weren't doing patrols. So then it looked like they were doing their job and keeping the Americans back, you know. And when we got there, my unit was like, no, we're patrolling a lot. And so we did. I mean, I was personally on over 360 missions in a year, and that's 2 weeks of leave. There's multiple missions a day. So we were always out there, and we always had a unit out there. So like the closest, one time we were on quick response force, my platoon. We got rocketed. We got to the gate. We were ready to go. Had to wait forever for clearance to roll out. We go. They lead us, you know, the TOC leads us to where, because we got eyes in the sky, right? And they lead us to where they think these rockets are coming from. We're like, well, we know right where this is at, right? Because we've been down this road. It's a fucking crater in the middle of the road. Shit, can't get there. And like, we're looking at them out, like over some water and some land. They're pretty far away, you know? And they're in a pickup truck, and they're like just packing things up to leave. Right? Yeah. We can't see any rockets. We can kind of see like boards, which is like they makeshift ramps they put in the back of these pickups to launch the rockets off of. So we know what it is, right? Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm on my internal comms, just talking to my platoon. I'm like, I'm gonna fucking shoot him. I'm gonna fucking shoot him. Like, you're not gonna shoot him. I'm fucking shooting him. Like, you're not shooting him. So if you did have to fire a round, you were writing a sworn statement on that round. Your entire platoon, everybody that's there is getting interviewed and writing sworn statements. So it's like suddenly you have all these officers that are supposed to be on your side trying to end you up or something. Right?
Is it like an incident report?
Yeah, exactly. That's, and every round had to be accounted for. So yeah, we didn't see a lot of action. Most of the time the rockets hit our airfield, which there's nothing there. 2 weeks before I left, I was training to be a training room NCO, an office job, because I was getting out when I got back. Didn't need to train for the next mission. Yeah. So I'm like in the office training for that, and a rocket hits fairly close. We're like, that was close, right? And my commander comes out of his office in that building, and he's like, "Everybody down!" Like, what the fuck? Like, I don't get down. Like, they're never close. And the next one comes. Tiny facility. Oh shit. And nobody was in there. Actually, 20 minutes later, there would have been a whole bunch of people out there that would have got fucked up. Damn. But I guess they can't tell time. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like on the floor, and my commander's like, "They got us zeroed in." And I'm like, "So fuck, I'm just supposed to lay here and wait till they hit us?" Yeah. And I knew my platoon was outside. So I'm like freaking the fuck out. Like, I just got to get to these guys. You gotta get to them, because they're supposed to have a formation in the parking lot outside. And now I'm in this building, and I didn't know where the rocket hit. I just knew it hit close. So for all I know, it hit them. Right? Yeah, I'm just like, that's all I could think about. And it was just me and my roommate was also training for that job. So we're like looking at each other like this on the floor, just looking over at each other like, we got to get outside. And then they sounded the alarm that like, it's like, all clear, you're supposed to get your gear and go to the dining facility. And like, so I fucking haul ass out that door, and I'm looking around, and I don't see anybody, and I see my medic running like to bunker, checking on people, because there's all these concrete bunkers all over the place. Yeah. But anyway, everybody was fine. Oddly enough, the only people that got injured and got Purple Hearts out of the deal were the guys that were working the TOC. They never leave the office. Their job is office stuff, right? Their job is to like communications, like making sure we have eyes in the skies, talking to us on the radio, things like that. So 2 guys walked over to the window when the first rocket hit. So like, whoa, where was that? The next one hit and blew out the window, and they got glass. Like, one of them got cut and one of them got glass in their eye. They got Purple Hearts. Man, what a hell! Never even left the base. Neither one of them ever wore them or anything. Yeah, it's like they knew what it was. So.
Yeah, that's a hell of a way. That's a hell of a way to get one of those. My grandpa, I think, had one, but actual. I don't want to say it like that because that's their story, but still, that's kind of a shitty way to get a Purple Heart. I want to reiterate, I smile so much and whatnot because I respect you. I respect everybody, but I respect you even more because of the service. So
I appreciate that.
really, thank you. What was the transition like back to civilian?
So that was wild. So when I deployed, well, even before going in to be a civilian, when I deployed, it was July 1st, 2009.
Okay.
So we got back July 1st, 2010. It's 4th of July weekend. So fireworks were not awesome after the rocket attacks and stuff. Like he had, not like, it wasn't like, oh, I get these war flashbacks, right? Because like I just told you, like there wasn't a ton of action. But it's just like an unsettling feeling, like you would feel if somebody was shooting rockets at you. Yeah, like the next one might hit me, you know, kind of thing. So that's like kind of what the fireworks did to me. Yeah. So that was which that lasted for years, and to the point where like when my kids were little, I would like hold them on my lap and have headphones in during fireworks.
Wow.
And like,
Well, it's that negative reinforcement you're talking about.
yeah,
There's negative reinforcement. Your brain was trained to
yeah,
be scared of
this
it.
is bad.
Yeah.
So it's weird that we celebrate our independence with
Right.
but yeah, now I enjoy fireworks. I like to watch them. I don't get that anymore. So that's nice. But there was that coming back, and then like Iraq is a disgusting place. Where I was like there's burning trash all the time. There's flies everywhere. Like it stinks, the air's dirty, there's no green. Like everything's just brown. It sucks.
Yeah.
So when I came back and like I was running a lot in Iraq, that's where I lost a bunch of weight. And I was training for a marathon. And so I get back and like I'm running and I'm looking at Mount Rainier in the distance. And I just start crying. And I'm like, I would go back tomorrow and defend this place some more, like just so other people can enjoy this. Now I'm older and smarter and know that we weren't defending ourselves there. Yeah. I wasn't fighting for your freedom. I was fighting for somebody else's.
Yeah. So I just thought of this. So over there is all brown and whatnot. Do colors look more vibrant the first?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
When you come back and you see grass, you're like, oh my God, like you see guys lay down in the grass. I'm not even joking.
Okay.
Yeah, like something green and lush and like you can breathe. We used to go for runs like in our gas mask, right? And I swore like it was better, like because it restricts your breathing, right? Yeah. I'm like, I'm not breathing all this dust and burning garbage. So, but then when I got out of the Army and like actually transitioned, so that was when I really realized like, okay, I do have some PTSD. I do have a bad alcohol problem, like, and not just alcohol, just whatever. Like I was just an addict. It didn't matter what it was. Alcohol was just the most readily available. Yeah. So there was a lot of like learning how to deal with that, and getting some help for the PTSD, not just drinking it away. And then there was I had a lot of trouble working with civilians. In the Army, everything's very, very brash. You know, you're like, hey, give me that fucking thing over here. Bring it over here. Yeah. Like, you can't talk to people like that in the civilian world. You get called into offices and like, what are you talking about? Like, somebody says something and you're like, kill yourself. Like, you can't say it. You gotta go to HR. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? It means I love them. Like, Jesus. So that was a big transition. But then I just started doing my own thing and hired my friends. So.
There you go. So it said you got out in 2011 from what I read. What did you do, like job wise, and when did you have kids?
Yeah, so when I got out because I was having a kid.
Oh, okay.
Brody, my oldest, who's 13 now, was coming, and I actually, when I got out, you can join the reserves for 2 years when you get out, or National Guard, to keep your insurance and stuff like that. And I was like, well, I don't know when he's going to be born, right? So, and he was born like a week after my insurance would have been out. So,
good call.
So yeah, had the kid. I started a Mr. Appliance franchise, which when I was in the Army, they have these classes called ACAP when you're getting out, which is Army Career and Alumni Program. It prepares you for being a civilian, gives you all these job options, right? And that's how I was like, oh, I'm going to open a franchise.
Cool.
narrowed it down to Mr. Appliance. Ultimately, it failed because of my addiction problems and my inability to ask for help on the business and stuff like that. But yeah, I did that, and then that's really where I learned, like, okay, I'm just going to work for myself. Like, I was a maintenance man for a little while, and I was good at it. I liked it, but it didn't really pay enough.
Gotcha.
Also, like, it got in the way of like using drugs.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of drug use in that time of first getting out of the Army. And then that's when I started MMA too, which didn't help with the drug use or the drinking. Actually, my coach was like, had a heavy Percocet Oxycontin addiction, and I would trade pills for training, which is something that I still struggle with living with that, because I mean, he overdosed and died from heroin. But like I can take a little bit of a consolation is that, like, one day he was like, dude, I'm gonna quit. Like, he's like, and it was after I detoxed, right? Yeah. He's like, I don't know how you did it without help. He's like, but I'm gonna quit. And so I stopped giving him pills.
Right on.
And but you know, ultimately he ended up in rehab for a little while, and then got out of rehab, seemed like he was doing pretty good, was working, and then one day some people found him dead, and he overdosed. And he's probably one of the most important influences I've ever had. He's the reason I have Matt Psycho now. He gave me the nickname Psycho Ward. His approach to training was always like, we're going to be in better shape than our opponents. We're going to work harder than our opponents. And that's what I've done with my wrestlers. And we've had great success using that. And so every day when I see my logo, every day when I hear, Matt Psychos, I think of him. So
That's awesome. That's a good story. You ever hear of Jocko Willner?
Yeah.
Yeah. He that was his whole, from what I read, that's his whole thing. Is just that we're going to be better than everybody else.
Yeah, we're just going to get up earlier and work harder.
Yeah, exactly. The 4 a.m. guy. I've been doing that. Now, I'm no SEAL or no Army guy, but I have found waking up at 4 a.m. makes my whole day and life better.
It doesn't make my day better.
No.
I was doing that for a while, and I was like, this is amazing how much time I have. And I mean, I was working at Printer Source Plus for my friend Joe as a salesman and a tech, as well as running B&K Handy Helper. So like many days I'd get up and I'd be at Menards and dropping materials off at the job site before I went to my job. I used to do the 4 a.m. thing, and I was like, this is awesome. This is amazing. But then when I met my girlfriend, like, that's when I started slipping, because I stopped listening to my overnight affirmations, right? Because it was like annoying her. And then I stopped waking up at 4, so I wanted to cuddle. Yeah. I've
slipped into the 5:30.
So I've got to get back to that a little bit, more meditation and things like that. But that's when I was actually, my ex and I broke up, and that was pretty eye-opening for me. Like, that was the first time I was ever like really alone without substances, and like got to know myself. And that really changed me for the better. That's when I started B&K Handy Helpers. That's when it was during COVID, so Matt Cycle was an online thing.
Oh wow.
I was like building this online platform. I had kids recruited to do, work the moves and do the videos for me. And so I just started pouring myself into projects and things like that. And it was awesome. It came a long way, and that's really what I owe what I'm at right now. I owe it to that girl breaking my heart. Thanks, Brandy.
I do want to go back to this. I am currently going through something similar to what you just said. And it might not mean much coming from me right this second, but it's not your fault, just like it's not my fault about the whole.
It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility.
Exactly. So I'm going through that right now. But I told the guy no, same thing. Now he shot himself, and so same thing. So I'll just tell you what I'm trying to tell myself. It's not your fault. I
appreciate it.
I do have a question. How was moving from an online platform to having a physical location?
So it was awesome, because that's what I wanted to begin with, was a wrestling academy. And the online thing was just like, how do I do this anyway? How do I continue this through COVID? And so I was coaching Napoleon's My Way team. at the time, and we got shut down 2 weeks before state. And these kids were freaking ready. Like I have a reputation for having my kids ready for the postseason, and they were ready to go. And then we got shut down. So I was like, it all started with me just like doing Zoom meetings with the kids, like keeping them mentally in the sport since we can't train. You know, what have you done today? Like, did you write down your goals today? What are your wrestling goals? Like, you know, we're going to wrestle again one day, right? And then like, what else are you dealing with in life? Like, since you're not wrestling or going to school, how have you improved other areas of your life? Like things like that. And so then I was like, man, we should do instructional videos. And so when I made the transition to the academy, it was just like going back to what I was already doing.
Okay.
So it was easier. Like, and now I don't even have the online platform. I never actually got up and going. So yeah,
Well,
easy.
Real quick, then these are your words, so I'm not paraphrasing. Matt Psycho Wrestling and MMA Academy is the perfect place for aspiring athletes of all ages, from elementary to high school students and adults seeking MMA training. We offer personalized programs catering to all skill levels. 313 South Main Street, Brooklyn, Michigan.
That's correct.
Awesome. What is your wrestling philosophy?
Oh, so my wrestling philosophy, again, is to outwork our opponents, push the pace, and never stop scoring.
Awesome.
So I never tell my wrestlers to worry about what their opponent's going to do. You'll never hear me tell a wrestler, hey, this kid does this. Because if he's worried about our offense, he can't get his offense off. So we're just going to get our hands on him and put him on defense right away.
Fair enough.
Be the first to score and the last to score in every position in every period.
Man, like you kind of gave me goosebumps. I'm not even a wrestler. I'm like, shit, yeah, man. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a skill you can apply to other areas.
Everything in life.
Yeah.
That's why wrestlers say once you've wrestled, everything else is easier.
Fair enough. What made you want to take this business venture? Clearly, besides like being a wrestler back when you were younger. And stuff.
Kids, the kids, man. Like it's my best way to give back is coaching.
Awesome.
I started my first coaching gig was baseball. My ex's son was playing baseball. And I'm a natural leader and coach anyway. So like if I know a little bit and I see you not doing it, like I'm gonna come and coach you up.
Yeah.
And
that's a damn good trait to have.
I can't shake it.
Trait.
I can't shake it. It's everywhere I go. So I started with that, and then I was like, man, I can really influence these kids for the better, and give influences that I didn't have, and more influences that I did have. Like, I don't give enough credit, like I guess publicly, to like my coaches that I had. I mentioned Coach Boer, middle school, Coach Bunker in high school. Ash was part of that. Mr. Schultz. Those guys are like, they probably didn't know they were getting through to me or didn't know if they were getting through to me at the time. But where I'm at now, like, has a lot to do with them. And that's, I mean, my family too. Like, I didn't get as much from my dad as I would have liked to. But that's not to say my dad never gave me any good advice. I tell people a lot, like he taught me a lot about like not what not to do as a dad. But he had a really, really tough childhood, like your dad. Those boys went through some stuff. And I now think that probably a lot of reason why my dad wasn't really there was like, because he didn't know how to discipline without abusing.
Understood.
Because that's what he went through. I mean, we're talking bad mental, verbal, physical abuse, bad stuff.
Gotcha.
All five of them boys, her dad, my dad, all of them. So yeah, it's so when I think about that, I'm like, maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe it was a good thing that dad, like, you know, my dad would like, if he disciplined us, it was like, go get your ass in the corner, nose to the corner. And then he'd leave and go to the store because he knew my mom couldn't stand that and would tell us to get out of the corner. Go to your room.
I wrote this down, and I don't know if it's a proper question because I'm not a wrestler. What style do you teach? If there are any styles.
All of them, yeah. So in America, we have this obsession with folk style because that's what we do in college.
Okay.
That's the wrestling you see in high school, where if you get taken down, you try to get up.
Okay, with like the ear, with
Yeah,
like, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's just protect.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to pretend like I know. I'm trying.
So the big difference, and then there's freestyle and Greco, which is what the rest of the world does.
Okay.
So Greco is all upper body. You can't touch their legs. You can't trip their legs.
Okay.
And then freestyle is similar to folk style, where like you get the takedown, but then like every time you expose your opponent's back to the mat, you get 2 points. So there's a lot of rolls in freestyle, and you can lock your hands when you're on top.
Okay.
So like, and you don't want to try to get up when you're on bottom.
Mhm.
So if you try to get up, it's easier to roll you. So there's like,
Also, they can just keep getting points by rolling you.
By
Okay,
rolling.
I got you.
yeah. So like if I take you down and get 2 points, then I lock my hands around your belly and I roll over, just like do some barrel rolls. I get 2 points every time I do that.
Gotcha.
So there's only, after you get taken down, it's only about 8 to 10 seconds. You have to not turn, and then they start you back on your feet.
Okay.
Freestyle. So yeah, we teach all 3 styles.
Right on.
In the springtime, that's when freestyle and Greco season starts. So we have state finals next weekend for folk style. So after we finish that, we'll come back and immediately start freestyle and Greco. That'll run for like 8 to 10 weeks, and then we'll go right back into folk style. Because again, the country is obsessed with folk style. So
Is there any and this is just me asking for I guess for the view, is there any safety measures in place? I don't know how wrestling works. To me, I'm not saying it's unsafe, but I ask because I don't understand. Like
yeah, it's a rough sport, right? So like I always tell the kids, like all of these moves we do, we can make them painful, okay? But they're all designed so you don't get injured.
Yeah.
Right. Like if it was injury prone, then it wouldn't be legal.
Mhm.
So I always tell them, like, if we're touching them, we should be hurting them.
Mhm.
Right. Because when you hurt somebody, they do what you want them to do.
Yeah.
So like within the rules,
Mhm.
be rough and aggressive, and then you don't get injured. I'm a huge football fan. I'm personally very thankful my kids don't play football. I think football is a lot more dangerous than wrestling because of the hits, the concussion. There's not a lot of concussions in wrestling. We've really focused on building the neck in wrestling. You have to be able to bridge with your weight and somebody else's weight, right?
Like on your neck.
Yeah,
Right?
like up on your head.
Okay.
And holding your shoulders off the mat, right? So your neck gets worked out. Like you have a strong neck when you're a wrestler, right?
Okay.
So concussions most of the time come from whiplash more than impact. So when you have a strong neck, that doesn't happen. There's a lot less injuries in wrestling. I mean, throughout the whole season since we started back in November, I've seen ambulances at wrestling tournaments twice, and I've been at a tournament every week. And at football, it's more. But sport, any contact sport, has some level of danger. Which I think is another reason kids should do it. Because if you grow up thinking your bones are made of glass, you're never going to do anything cool.
Yep, I was a foot fairy and I still broke bones. So it's like any sport can hurt you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any sport can. Do you offer any private lessons, and do you do competitive, recreational, or both?
Yeah, so I do offer private lessons. If you go to wrestlingtournaments.com and click on find a private coach, you can put in your area and private coaches will come up. I'm on there. That's how you book your private lessons for me. I book half-hour or 1-hour increments. I do privates for fitness. I do privates for wrestling. I do privates for just about any martial art, boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling.
What was the website again? I'm gonna put it in the
wrestlingtournaments.com.
Awesome.
And so that's also all the tournaments I hold. You can register through that.
Cool.
And then we have an MMA class, regular MMA class, 7:30 to 9 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday. And we do adults and kids.
Cool.
So as your skill level, gets better, like if you want to compete, I can do competitions. There's kickboxing all the time. There's MMA. Like I'm well connected in all the areas and can always get kids or adults competition.
Awesome. Man, this is awesome to me. Is there any student success stories that you are allowed to share?
Yeah, man. I have a ton of student success stories. Actually, quite recently. Okay, so last year I got this kid, 7 years old, wrestler, right? Wrestled with the school all season for their little club season. Came over to us a couple weeks before regionals. So only like 6 practices or something. And he goes out and he wrestles regionals and he's 1 match away from qualifying for state. And I told his mom, if I had him for 2 more weeks, he would have made it. And she's like, we're going to be with you all next season, right? So this season rolls around, regionals comes, and he's got this big bracket. And I'm like, oh, man. Like, I'm feeling it, right? Like, okay, I got to get this kid through. You see how that happens. Right? And like, there's nothing I can do now. All the work's been done in the season, right? So I'm a little bit sketched out because the kid's last couple tournaments, he's like not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's like standing straight up, reaching for the head, trying to rip him down by the head. Like, it's not how you're supposed to be wrestling, right? Okay. And it cost me, lost bad, like those tournaments. And so we roll into regionals. I'm like, man, he hasn't been wrestling really nice. So we had a talk, right? Goes on his first match, immediately shoots, takes the kid down, pins him. Cool, we got to win. Anyway, long story short, kid wrestles that way throughout the day, right? No more head hunting. Takes third place. Not only qualifies for state, but wins the third place match to take third place. And now he's off the state. So then I get a text from his mom yesterday or the day before that says, hey, I know you're busy this week, but I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done for him. Not only has he improved at wrestling, but he's improved in the classroom. He just got student of the month. And since you know his personality, you know how big that is for him. Because he's like bouncing off the walls all the time, you know. So to hear that, like the on the mat stuff's cool. Yeah, feather in my cap as a coach, right? But the off the mat stuff, that's really what's important. That's really what tells me, like, yep, I'm doing it right. Because one day these kids are going to be adults, man. They're going to be out in the world. And I see some of these young adults in the world, and I'm like, there's no way in hell I can let this continue.
You know, it's crazy for me to think, you're talking about Mr. Ash and these guys. In another 20 years, these kids are going to be talking about you the same way they
I hope
talk
so,
about
man.
him. That's awesome. That's awesome to me.
Right. You know, I see like when I'm out in public, like no better feeling than being out in public and hearing, hey, coach. Like, I just love being called coach. I love it.
Changing lives.
That's and like, so I'm also starting a wrestling league, right? Because I'm not a huge fan of like the way the leagues have become around here. Well, in the state, it just seems like everybody, like, they start making money and they're like, how do we make more money?
Yeah.
Right? And so it gets less and less about the kids. And there's this new format where kids can basically, a tournament is like think of it like a scrimmage. Instead of like wrestling a bracket for a certain place and worried about how you perform, they can wrestle 5 to 7 matches in 2 hours, be back home. It doesn't matter if they win or lose. Like, you wrestle a certain amount of matches, you get a medal. So we're starting a league of doing that. So instead of sitting in a gym for 4 hours and getting 3 matches, like, now you can be there for 2 hours and get 7 if you want. Okay. And then the last 2 tournaments will be actual bracketed tournaments for regionals and state finals. So when I started this, my girlfriend says, this seems like it's going to take up a lot of your time. Yeah, it is going to take up a lot of my time, that's for sure. And she's like, are you making any money from this? And I'm like, I got like irritated, right? And now I gotta say, like, she's coming from a good place, right? Like, that's important. You can't work for free, you know, or your family will suffer. And that's the last thing I want to do is make my family suffer. So she was right in asking, but I was like, you know, that's not what's important to me. Someday I'm not going to be here, and this league will continue to go on and continue to touch the lives of children. After I'm dead, I'm still going to be helping the kids. And that's what's important to me. That's way beyond any amount of money. And somebody asked me the other day, like, let's say, you know, you get this league kicked off and one of your competitors wants to buy it and shut it down. They say, you should just tell them $500,000. And I was like, well, no, because if I tell them $500,000 and then they disband the league and we're back to square one, now the kids didn't get any help. So it's not worth $500,000 to me. And he was like, wow.
That is, what's the word? When nobody's around, that's integrity. That's integrity.
It's an Army value. It's one of the 7 Army values. And like, what's integrity? Doing the right thing even when no one's watching. So, but you know, there's going to be this extravagant state finals, and the guy providing our capital, the owner of WrestlingTournaments.com, Jason Layton, amazing person. joined the board for this league, and he's like, "Hey man, I know you don't have capital, like our company will put up the capital."
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's huge. So we're putting together this really awesome state finals event, and he's like, "Look, I know you're not charging a ton of money to wrestle in the state finals, right? Like, that's fine, right? And I know you're not charging a ton of money to the spectators, right? And that's fine." He's like, "But even with that, if you're talking 2,000 wrestlers and they pay, say, $25 a person, like, there's going to be money left.
Yeah.
And you need to take some of that." And I'm like, "Let's organize it through the nonprofit. Let's put this percentage back into the league. Let's give you this percentage for your capital return. If there's anything left," he's like, "You're taking money."
Do you ever like band them together and like have them do like fundraisers as like a team?
Yeah,
things like
yeah,
that?
we do. We've done fall cleanups for yards, which actually, when I set out to do that, it was just supposed to be free, and then it turned into them giving us checks and
People
pop bottles.
donating type deal.
We've done can drives for like, we do an annual trip at the end of the season, like spring, summer. We went to Gatlinburg the last couple of years, wrestle a
Nice.
tournament, hang out, do some stuff. So we've done like can drives, raised thousands of dollars of cans. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we've done. We've done cells, like you got a calendar, right? And there's stars on the calendar, and you buy a star based on what day it is. Like if it's the 30th, it's $30.
Oh,
It's the 15th, it's $15. So by the end of the month, they get, a good amount of money accumulated. So yeah, and I have sponsors. I have some amazing sponsors. Phantom Screens sponsors us for the season. Kayla Dominique, Howard Hanna Real Estate, Tim Creech Real Estate Team, 5-Star Realty, Josh's Dumpsters, also some wrestling parents of ours, just an amazing family. They own Total Tree Services as well. Josh's Landscaping.
I've met him a couple of times. He has been a hard man to get
Super, super busy. He's even hard for me to get.
Yeah, I believe it.
I'm actually trying to get a hold of him today. So like he'll be active on Facebook, but not see your message. And
Small world.
Sports Mentor is one of our sponsors. Used to be Second Amendment Processing. He started a new company, so we're going through them.
Awesome.
I'm not naming everybody. I'm forgetting some. Yeah, shame on me.
Hey, that's all right.
They're gonna be like, "What?"
Next time you do something, can drive or anything, please let us know. We would love to help in any way.
Okay.
Where our goal is to actually like hit the ground on some of these too, like go to events and do
Yeah.
a podcast of an event.
That would be sweet.
Yeah. Well, and in the idea of a podcast, what I'm doing is different. But I don't make no money. This is just eventually.
Yeah.
I just want to see if I can do it, if you can do it, if she can.
We
do
want to
it,
make a
anybody can
change
do
in
it.
this town because this town has a bad reputation.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you're doing it. Very, very.
So I actually have an event tonight.
Okay.
It's so I've done this thing for the youth wrestlers. Imagine an MMA show, right? Where it's like, it's one fight, right? You get one fight, but there's 20 fights on the card, right?
Okay.
And the fighters get walkout music and all that. So that's what we're doing for the youth wrestlers. This is our second one. It's called the Psychosocial Super Match
The
Series.
psychosocial, I love that.
I'm a big Slipknot
I
fan.
love Slipknot.
I was like, every tournament I've ever held has been the psychosocial. So, yeah, they just have numbers.
Okay.
For our regular Warzone tournaments, I think we're up to like psychosocial 4 or 5.
Cool.
5, I think, and then this is the Super Match Series 2. So yeah, they get their walkout music just like the stars. They walk out, fog machine lights, wrestle their match. The winners get this cool engraved hammer.
Oh, that's cool.
We'll be at Columbia Upper Elementary tonight, 6 p.m. So yeah, it's gonna be a good time.
Man, if we are done with the post thing, we will be out there. That's awesome. That is awesome. How long have you been open, and what are your membership options and fees?
So I've been open at a physical address since we were at Ackerson Lake School, thanks to Zach Canam. That's where we started. So we were, what was that, 2021?
No, it's all right.
22, I guess it would be. And then we moved to Brooklyn June of 2023.
Okay.
And that's probably where we're going to remain for the long haul. What was the other question? Prices and classes?
Memberships.
Okay, so
Yeah.
for wrestling, we do $15 drop-ins. First practice is free.
Cool.
we're like a drug dealer in that sense. We know you'll come back.
Yeah, yeah.
So first practice is free, $15 drop in after that, or you can do a 3 days a week training, any 3 days on a monthly subscription basis, $90 a month.
And this
Or
is
we
kids
have-
and adults, right?
This is kids for wrestling.
Okay.
So and then we have a $140 a month option, which is 5 days a week. Now, the reason that's so crazy high is because you can sign a 12-month agreement and train for the whole year for 5 days a week, $90 a month. So my goal is to push people to do that because not only like does it keep the doors open all year round, but it also keeps my wrestlers improving throughout the year. So it's good for them too. And then my MMA classes are $89 a month or $10 per class. We do that 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 9 p.m. right after wrestling practice, which is 5:45 to 7:30. And then, of course, I have my private training schedule. Starts at 3 p.m., goes to 5 p.m. All 5 days a week.
I did a little research. You are not on the high end, so I really believe that you are trying to get back. Which I already believed it, but you are not on the high end of pricing, so that's very nice.
Yeah, most MMA gyms are over 120 at least a month. I'm at $89 because I'm trying to build this. It's not huge in the area. So I think, once you get some people involved, there's no reason to raise your prices because you've already been doing it at this price, right? So now you just get more people, so you have more money anyway. I think it's an affordable option and it's not, you don't have to want to be a fighter to come to MMA class. It's a great workout. And it's a fun workout. I have a guy that literally only does it for a workout. And the first day he's like, this is so much fun, more fun than sitting in my basement, like running on a treadmill and lifting weights. This is so much more fun.
I get that. A friend of mine, Cody Luke, used to ride dirt bikes when I actually almost died riding a dirt bike, but kickboxing for fun, just for fun.
It's a good time.
I think that's cool.
And it's not like people think it's like, rah, like you got all these fighters in the gym and like everything's all hardcore. It's not like that. It's so chill. Because jujitsu is part of martial arts too, and that's just cuddling in your pajamas. It's chill.
Capoeira is
don't teach that.
Fair enough. What is the atmosphere like in your academy, and what are your expectations for student behavior?
So everything's very positive and upbeat, high energy. So for my kids, like sometimes, kids are hard to rein in sometimes, right? And you might have 30 in the room, and sometimes they start screwing around. So I usually like to circle up and make them chop their feet and sprawl until I get tired. So I expect them to have fun and have a good time, but stay focused on what we're doing. Right? Like if you're not having fun, then you're not going to learn. Like kids learn more when they're having fun. I just installed a basketball hoop at the gym.
Cool.
Like I'm not against fun at all, but when it's time to work, we work hard. And it's okay to work hard with a smile on your face. Right. And it's the same thing for the adult MMA people. Like I expect you to bring a positive attitude and I expect you to give maximum effort. If you're not going to do those things, like I'm sure you can find somewhere else.
Well, and it's easier to give maximum effort when you are in a place like what you just said, like you encourage smiling. Like it's easier to give maximum effort if I get to have all this fun as well.
Yeah,
it's a lot easier.
Yep. And I'm not a serious person. So I crack jokes in the middle of my training and stuff. Most of it goes over the kids' heads. But, it's funny for me.
Are there any questions that I should have asked that I didn't? Or is there anything I missed of this section of your life?
I don't think so. There's a lot more in my life to talk about in between there, but no, I mean, I feel like we got a message across.
Perfect.
I don't feel like there's anything that I was dying to say that we missed. So
cool. I was going to touch a little bit on your certified home inspection, if you don't mind, and then wrap up.
Yeah.
Awesome. So how do you obtain a certification to do home inspections? And I'm assuming that you do home inspections goes with your B&K handyman service.
Yeah. So that's why I did it, was to supplement the handyman stuff. I went through Internachi, which is an online home inspection. It's probably the premier one in the country.
Awesome.
Paid for the training, did the training, and it was pretty easy. Anybody can do it. I would recommend it. If you're looking for something extra to do, anybody can learn to do it. You don't have to be in construction to do it, and you can charge $300 a pop. And people have to have an inspection when they buy a house. It's You know, you could get in with a couple realtors and they could refer you. But yeah, it's a pretty easy job. It's just not something that like you can do full time. I have a friend that does it as well. I haven't done an inspection in quite a while other than my own. But yeah, and if I'm too busy, I always refer them to him. Tim Barker at Michigan Center Heating and Cooling. He does home inspections too.
Cool. Yeah, I kind of assumed that it was like a sublet of your actual handyman thing, but I was just a little intrigued. You Army handyman service coach. I'm like, I wanted to touch a little bit on that.
I've done so much stuff.
Yeah.
The appliance repair business, the handyman. I've been a commercial construction superintendent.
Wow.
That's with an amazing company, Next Chapter Construction. They actually headhunted me and hired me because my company used to do work for them. And they're like, hey, you know, we need a superintendent. I'm like, I don't have a college degree or 5 years experience. And they're like, we want you.
Yeah.
That's not everything.
That's why the company was amazing, because they're like, yeah, no, let's do this. I think you'd be great at it. And, the first project I had was I lost like $40,000 on it. So that was tough to deal with. But then like my next one, they were like, wanted me there all the time. They're like, Ward's great. Everything goes great when Ward's around. So I learned a lot from it and improved from it. But unfortunately for them, that was at the time that I was decided I was going to open a gym. So my boss there, this is how great the company is. They want you to succeed as a person, regardless if that's within their company or not, right? So my boss was like, what is it that you really want to do? Like, really, I started telling him some construction stuff. He's like, what do you really want to do? I was like, I want to open an MMA academy, you know, a wrestling academy. It all started with wrestling. It's like, I just want to coach kids full time. That's what I want to do. He's like, what do you need to do that? And I was like, well, I should probably get my personal training certification, maybe change my degree plan, go back to school and be a coach, whatever. And he's like, well, you should get that personal training certification. How long will that take you? And I was like, probably 2 months or so. And he's like, all right, you got 3 months. And I'm firing you. I was like, what?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, you have 3 months to set this up and go live your dream and do what you're supposed to do, or I'm going to fire you. So you have to. And I was like, all right.
Perfect.
So amazing people.
That's
and
awesome.
I still text him once in a while, like just let him know what I'm doing. The VP of that company, who's now moved on, Tom Crouch, is one of my life mentors now, man. Like, it's just, that guy was awesome. And he like helped me. Like, I told him, like, hey man, he had a lot of respect for Army guys. His dad was an Army guy. And I told him when I started, I was like, you know, the Army taught me I could learn anything, but this is a lot, dude. And he's like, you'll be fine. You can learn it. So, and he helped me along.
Awesome.
He's a great guy. The owner of the company, Jeremy Nybert, great person. His right-hand woman, is an amazing person too, Lindsay Early. The whole company is just amazing people.
That's a good feeling to get headhunted. I've enjoyed. I've only once or twice have I had that honor, but it feels really good. People go out of their way to hire you. It feels good. How long does a typical inspection take?
Oh, an inspection takes like 3 to 4 hours.
Okay.
You got to take pictures of everything, make sure everything functions properly. And then the software I use just writes the report for me. But in the old school days, they had to like actually write the report, type it all up. I would imagine that took a couple of days.
Gotcha. So you don't do it too much. And this is my last question really about it. How do you handle potential conflicts of interest?
So Internachi has a very specific code on that. If I know you, I can't do your home inspection.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's really just that simple.
Did that
I
come
know you
from
got to do the inspection.
Okay. So I wrote a little note here for me. I really wanted to make sure that I learned enough about you. To be honest with you, I don't think if I even had 5 hours that I would have been content with this interview.
Yeah.
So I've been inviting on people from season 1. When Mark's done with the room downstairs, I would like to invite you back on, maybe 6 months, maybe a year.
Okay.
But maybe do a different part of your story.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So you found success in a lot of different facets of life: Army, business owner, coach, handyman, home inspector. Out of all of these, what is your definition of success?
How do you impact the people around you? That's what I tell my wrestlers. You can run every move in my system perfectly, but if your partner can't do it, you didn't succeed. You fail.
Awesome.
So yeah, What do the people around you say? How do you impact the lives of the people around you?
That's what success is to you. Awesome. Katie, your questions?
If you could use one word to describe your entire journey to where we are now, what would it be?
Crazy.
Crazy?
Crazy.
And then do you have any advice for like anybody really who want to get into the MMA or wrestling, or maybe even like high schoolers who are struggling like with the same things that you did? Do you have any advice for?
Yeah, so my advice for anything you're thinking about doing in life is to stop planning and go do it. I've had ventures in my life that I was like, okay, I got to get this, this, and this, and this. I have an entire appliance repair website, 80% built, and never pulled the trigger because like I was trying to figure everything out, and then I got burnt out. Like there's no wins when you're spending all that time on setup. Go jump in and do it. And then when you start to have those little wins, it motivates you for the next thing. That's what gets you through those monotonous times when you're trying to build. So like if you're thinking about MMA and you haven't come in yet, it's probably because it's intimidating to you. So pull up your britches, walk in the door, and within 5 minutes, you'll find out that it doesn't take courage to do what we do. It's a very welcoming environment. Everybody you see on my mats will welcome you with open arms. They want you to be there. And that's MMA or wrestling. If you're a high school kid and you're struggling with anything at all, just remember that high school is a small part of your life. And whatever you're thinking about doing to make it better, just start doing it. If it doesn't work for you, stop and do something else. It's that simple. It's really that simple. You don't have to have life all figured out before you jump in.
Man, it's funny you said that. It's this. I thought, I'm gonna do it. I am tired of doing like I need to do something more. And first episode, Friday I bought the mics, I bought everything. Saturday was our first one. So I really resonated with that. If I don't start it, I'm never gonna do it. So I just got.
And it's like, how do you get viewers if you don't have content? So you just have to make content.
So
you just have to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, awesome. So my favorite part of the show, it's not much, but here's a $25 gift card.
Let's go.
Yep. Business card from Aggie Sports Bar. Aggie Sports Bar serves food and drinks in a family-friendly atmosphere since the early 80s with a fun game room for all ages. Average Joe's Bar is located in the back area of building for evening hours with food, drinks, and pool table. So.
And my mommy used to work there.
No kidding.
Yeah, years ago when I was in high school, she worked there. But yeah, Ash and Justin Mitchell own it now.
Yep.
And anytime you go in there, like you can grab Ash, he'll tell you a story, take a picture with you. It reminds me of like Rocky.
Yeah.
And the Rocky movie, he opened that restaurant.
Yeah.
And that's like his job is to walk around and tell people stories. That's Ash. Like that's what
he says hi to us every single
time. Oh, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to my place. It's great.
Well, Ward, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Formalities, yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, awesome.
And I think that's it, guys.
See you guys next time. See you tomorrow, actually, for Mr. Field Trip.
All right. Coolio.